So this morning we're going to be looking at our month-end processes. I'm be processing within the Sage 200 2015 version, but the process is nigh on identical in all of the versions that you may be running. There's 5 different sections that we'll be looking at, all of which are relevant to the month-end, but some of which you don't have to wait to the month-end to actually run them, like the proof ledger balances and the reconciliation process, but it's a good opportunity to sort of take account and do the housekeeping on a regular basis. The first thing you want to be looking at is the balance ledger utilities. Now within Accounting System Manager and System Utilities, we have an option in there called Balance Ledgers. That's split into 2 sections. So we have Proof Financial Ledgers and we have Proof Commercials. If I run the Financials modules, you have to run them individually. So our module, Sales Ledger, Purchase Ledger, Nominal and Cash Book all have to be balanced on an individual basis. If we start off with the Sales Ledger, you have the option to just balance a single account or to do all accounts. And as part of the month end, we recommend you do all accounts. You have 2 validate data options. You can just choose to validate and report any anomalies, or you can validate, report and correct any anomalies. Again, we recommend start off just by validating and reporting just to see what's going on with the data before anything is amended. I'm just going to say OK to that, and yes, I want to continue. Now what this process is going to do is just read all of your sales ledger accounts, and it ensures that the balance on the account agrees to the total of all the transactions on that account. Now this is the ideal scenario. You have total errors of nothing, so hence there's nothing to be fixed. Let's go back in to our financials modules, and this time we're going to have a little look at the purchase ledger. We have exactly the same options, so we could run it for a single account or all accounts. We can validate and report, validate, report and correct anomalies. I just say OK to that, and yes, I want to continue. Now this is going to read through all my purchase ledger accounts and ensuring that the balance on the account agrees to the total of the transactions on those accounts. Now this again is not a bad scenario. This is telling us that we have found one error, but Sage can fix that error. This particular account has a balance of £100, when if you add up all the transactions, it should actually come to £518, and hence there's a discrepancy. So in this instance, we can run that process again, going back into our financials module, select purchases and all accounts, but this time we'll select validate, report and correct anomalies. Again, just say OK, and yes, we want to continue. So the same process is going to be followed, but this time Sage will update the data. And you can see instead of saying errors fixable, it says errors fixed is 1 for that account. If I run it for a 3rd time on the purchase ledger, just to show you that that's fixed those problems. OK, just validate and report. And yes, I want you to continue. It'll read through our data. And now we can see we have that ideal scenario. Total errors is nothing, so there's nothing to be fixed. If we run it for the nominal ledger, if you notice there's no options available. You can't choose just to validate and report. You can't do it for a single account. Sage will automatically correct any anomaly within the nominal ledger. And this is to ensure that your nominal ledger actually balances. If there is a discrepancy found, then it will post the balancing figure to your suspense account, and it's for you then to investigate where that anomaly may have occurred. Same is true of the cash book. If I go into proof ledgers on my cash book, again I have no options just to validate and report or just to choose a single account. Sage is going to read through all of my bank accounts, and it's going to ensure that the balance on the account agrees to the total of those transactions. Again, ideal scenario. The commercials modules has the 2 options available, the 2 validate data options, validate and report or validate, report and correct anomalies. Now you can choose to select modules individually. However, if you were to just select stock control, then it will automatically select sales order processing and purchase order processing. So it will do all of your commercial modules at the same time. And what this process will do will ensure that all of your sales orders balance to the value of transactions on them, your purchase orders balance to the value of transactions on those, and that your stock control agrees to the on order figure from your purchase order processing, your allocated figures from sales order processing, and the total in-stock values agree to the quantities you hold in individual warehouses. So if I were to just run through this, it'll just take a minute or two while it actually goes through each of the modules. So you can see here that we're processing sales orders, we're processing stock, and it's come up with this screen. So it's telling us that within sales order processing we have 134 errors, but they're all fixable. In purchase order processing we have 12 errors, but they're all fixable. And in stock control, no errors, nothing requires to be fixed. It tells us what the error is, so the total values on the order doesn't match to the values of the order return lines. So I'm just going to close that, go back into my commercial modules, validate, report and correct anomalies for all of my modules and say OK. So yes, I want to continue. So this time Sage is going to read through all of those modules, all my sales orders, my purchase orders, and it's fixed those problems. So I'm going to close that. And again, just to prove that all works well, OK to that, yes to continue. And now we can see total errors is nothing, errors fixable is also nothing. Now if you were to get, for example, a message that said total errors 3, errors fixable 0, that's when you have to contact us and we need to then go and investigate your data through the SQL database to try to work out what the issues are. Now it's possible to receive notification to individual users that approved ledger balances needs to be run. This is defined within your accounting system manager, so within the system administration tool. And if I were to just go into here and go into the roles, we've only got one role set up, but there's an option here to receive alerts from Messenger. Now what this means is that if a user were to crash out of the system, or maybe the network went down, something went awry basically with the connection between the PC and Sage database, as an admin user, you would receive a little pop-up on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen telling you that you need to run proof ledger balances. You can then go into that utility that we just ran and just to ensure that everything is okay. Now also in that scenario, if somebody has crashed out of the system or if they've lost a connection somehow to Sage, you need to check the user login status. Still within Accounting System Manager and System Utilities, there's an option in here called User Login Status. And again, it's worth checking this on a regular basis, but certainly at each month end. What this screen is going to show us is a list of any users that have disconnected logins. These users, as I say, can have just crashed their PC, just lost the connection on the network, and you would see the username, the last activity. And when you highlight that user, it would tell you any windows that they had open, and hence you can clear them down just by highlighting their name and clicking the log off button here, and it will close down any locks that they may have within the system. We also have a users tab, and that tells us who's currently logged in and when they lost the last activity time. So a good way of just checking if you need to get everybody out of the system who's actually logged in, so you can contact them to log out of Sage. Okay, now the Balanced Ledger Utilities, as I say, is one of those utilities that doesn't have to be run just at the month end. It can be run at any time during the working day, but we do recommend as part of your month end process that you incorporate that particular module. Okay, the next thing we're going to look at is stock control, and we're going to have a look within adjustments, and we're going to have a look at the managed stock take routine. Again, it doesn't have to be done with, on the month-end process itself, but it's usually done as part of a month-end routine or a year-end routine. Okay, so to start a stock take, you just select the New List button on the options there, and you select the warehouse that you want to do the stock take on. When you hit the Display button, it will list all the stock items that are held in that particular warehouse. So if, for example, I were to select a different warehouse and do Display, You see, I don't get to all of the stock items in the list, only those that are associated with that location. Let's display my factory settings. Now, by default, it's listing all the items, but nothing is selected to be counted. If we want to do a full stock take, we can just select all, and you can see that everything is selected. To clear all, it will untick everything. If we want to be specific, we can just tick individual boxes and choose which items that we're wanting to count. But we also have this auto select button. Now, if I just say auto select, we have all these options available to us. Maybe we want to just select items from a product group. We just want to count our cabinets today. Maybe we want to select by dates. Select the items for stock take by the dates they were last sold, or by the due date of the stock take. There is a setting within each stock item where you can define how frequently you want to count these particular items, and Sage will remember the last time they were counted, and hence it will tell us when they're due for our next stock take. You can select by quantity, either by quantity in stock. You can select by traceable type, so maybe you just want to count your serial numbered items or your batch numbered items. But you can also select by value, either by average buying price or the value of the stock itself, the top any number of items that you choose. I'm going to select my cabinet, so I'm going to apply that, but it's possible to save this as a template. So next time you come in to do a stock take, you don't have to remember it's the cabinets you're going to be selecting or it's the value. You just load this particular template and it will remember your settings. If I just apply this, you'll see now it's automatically ticked just those items that are in my cabinets product group. It'll actually print out the stock take sheets for us that we can print out, take down to the warehouse and fill in as we're counting our stock. It's asking here if we want to show expected quantities on stock take sheets, and I would expect that most people would not tick that, so that the stock take sheets are blank and people count what they actually find rather than what they're expecting to find. So here's an example of the stock take sheet. It shows us our item code, our name, a bin if we'd specified a bin within Sage 200, and there's just a blank box there for the warehouse staff to go around the warehouse and write in the actual levels that they count. Now, as you actually get the stock take sheets back, you can then start entering the values. People can still be counting. You can come back to this option as many times as you choose. So I'll go into Enter Values. It's asking if we want to pre-fill the actual counts with their expected values. And at this point, I'm inclined to say, yes, you may as well. The reason being, if I just close that, if I now expand my screen, my actual quantity is reflecting what Sage says, but I can type in I can overtype that with the counts that the warehouse staff have entered onto those stock take sheets. So in this example, maybe they only found 100 of these items. If you notice, the variance is calculated as the difference between our expected quantity and the actual quantity. We were expecting 100 items of this item to be in stock, but maybe we found, oopsie, 110. So this time we have a positive variance. Now we can enter the stock take sheets, as I say, as they come in. So if I just say OK to that, I can close down this stock take. Next time I get some more sheets in, I can just go back in to enter values, just show my values, and continue where I left off to enter the actual quantities. Once I've entered those quantities, I can save and print, and it will show me then my discrepancy report. So this is telling me now of all the items that were on my stock take. These are the items that have a variance, either a positive or a negative, and also the cost value of that variance. So I can print this out just to check that I have entered the correct quantities for this particular stock take. If I haven't, I can go in and change them. If I have, and I'm happy with my stock take, OK to that, I can then just say, right, we've completed this stock take. And it's at this point that Sage will update the stock levels with the values that we've actually entered on the stock take. Up until we hit the complete button, people can carry on processing, receiving goods, issuing goods out, and what Sage will do at the complete point is make an adjustment by that variance figure that's reported on our variance report. Now, as I say, again, doesn't have to be done as part of a month end, can be done at any point in time, but it's quite useful routine to be aware of. Okie dokes, the next thing I want to be looking at is reconciling the purchase and the sales ledger. Okay, so I'm going to be focusing on the purchase ledger, but the process is exactly the same for our sales ledger. Within the purchase ledger and our reports and payments control, the first thing we want to do is run our aged creditors, either detailed or summary. It is possible to do a retrospective aged creditors and debtors report, but in the case of balancing our ledgers, I always recommend make sure that you balance as of today's date. So we're not going to do a retrospective report, we're going to do our creditors as of today's date. And if we go to the end, we will see that the balance on our purchase ledger reads 256,863 and 65p. Okay, let's have a little look at the nominal ledger. I'm going to go to my nominal list. There's my creditors control, account number 25100. And if we just go to the account inquiry, we can see the balance year to date is reading 257,350 and 53 pence. So there is an imbalance between our creditors control on the nominal ledger and our creditors listing from the purchase ledger. Now, there are a number of reasons why that might be out of balance. The first thing we need to be doing is looking at our deferred postings. If we go to our reports and account analysis, there's a report there that says View Waiting Postings Report Deferred. We want to just select this particular account, so our 25100, and we say OK to that. And we will see then we get a debit and a credit total. There is an inquiry screen that lists all of our deferred postings, but it doesn't total it up, so it's much easier and clearer if you actually run the waiting postings report. On this report, we can see we have a waiting debit value of 28869.35p and a credit value of 28382 and 47p. Now, I have a calculator, and I'm going to have to take my words for this, but by the time we take our deferred postings into consideration, our nominal ledger now balances to the purchase ledger. So we could then go and have a little look at our retrospective figures. Okay. And to do that, if you want to run retrospectively, again, you run your purchase ledger aged creditors report. Okay. This time you tick on retrospective and you choose the date that you want to report back to. So I'm actually in 2015 accounts here, so I'm going to have a little look at our figures for the 31st of March 2015. And OK. So this time, okay, our creditors report tells us our aging date and it informs us that it is retrospective. And we now have the figures at that point in time, £190,000. Within the nominal ledger, okay, I quite like to run the trial balance report. So financial statements, trial balance, posting accounts for the same period. So we're looking at the end of March 2015. And 25,100, £190,000. So we do balance retrospectively. Now, if there is a difference, on the handout sheets that I've given you, we've given you some hints and tips really as how to identify those postings that may have caused that difference. So, for example, if postings have been made for a closed purchase ledger period, then the purchase ledger will have been updated with the transaction at that date. However, the nominal ledger will have been updated at the next nominal period. So if we run retrospectively our aged creditors report at the end of January, for example, when the nominal transaction's gone through in February, then we will have an imbalance. And you can identify those postings by running the transaction listing report within the nominal ledger, but selecting the transaction period from your retrospective period number, entering your creditor's control account, and entering the transaction dates that you're looking for. Now, it's also possible to do a manual journal to control accounts. If I just amend our creditor's control account, there is an option here. Do you want to allow manual journal entries? Invariably, it's ticked on, and maybe for your control account, you want to untick that so that you can't post a journal to the control account. All the postings for your control accounts should be generated from the relevant ledger. However, in this example, it is ticked, and again, within the nominal ledger, reports and transaction listing, we can identify any transactions that have been posted manually just by running this report for that particular account, but saying we only want to report on transactions where the source is the nominal ledger, i.e. a nominal journal has been manually posted to that account. And we can see that we do have a little posting there that needs to be identified, reversed out, and investigated. Okay, now as I say, I've done that for your purchase ledger. The process is exactly the same for the sales ledger. So always make sure you balance of today's date. Always look at your deferred nominal postings. Look for any postings that have been generated directly from the nominal ledger. And also, if it's retrospective, ensure that you capture any postings that have been posted into a closed accounting period, because they will have been posted into the future nominal period. So that's reconciling our purchase and sales ledger. The next thing that we're going to have a little look at is reconciling our VAT and running the VAT as part of our quarter. So this is done through the nominal ledger and our period end routines. We have an option in there, VAT analysis. Okay, now when we run our VAT analysis, we have 3 tabs. We have the current period totals, and this highlights and summarises for each of our VAT codes the sales goods amount and the VAT amount, the purchase goods amount and the VAT amount associated with those transactions. If you notice they're blue hyperlinked fields, if you just click on one of those, it will show you all the transaction details associated with that particular figure on the front screen. And you can right-click, you can export this to Excel, you can print it out for your records. However, all the work really is done through this tab here, the current period return. If you notice here, we're in our VAT return end date 31st of March 2015. And this screen looks similar to the VAT return that you'll be posting through to HMRC. It shows us all of our boxes, so box 1 being VAT due in this period on sales and other outputs, box 2 being VAT due this period on acquisitions from other EC member states, total VAT, VAT reclaimed this period on purchases, and then the net VAT. And again, all of these figures are blue hyperlinked underlined fields, so we can just click on any one of those, and again it will show us the transactions associated with those figures. So we can see here we have goods amounts of £100 in exempt, and we can see those transactions. In standard rate, if I highlight those, again you can see all of the transactions that amount to that particular value on our VAT return. Again, what we can do is we can right-click and we can export everything to Excel, or we could print this out for our records. Now, it is possible to make adjustments to any of these figures. You have to have the paperwork to back up to HMRC, but you can make that adjustment through this screen. So reason, I don't know, we'll see. I'm just going to put in error. Okay, the amount that we want to adjust, so I'm going to say £200. And if you notice here, at the moment it's showing 187. And if I close that, okay, it's changed the total here to the 387. It's taken that adjustment into consideration before we actually send that and submit that to HMRC. Okie dokes. From this screen, we can just print out our reports, our VAT reports. Okay, it'll produce 3 reports. It will produce basically a copy of your VAT return. You notice it says report only, records not adjusted. I've come up with this message. It says this report could not be generated. No data was returned for this report. That's telling me that it's trying to produce a report of any VAT codes that we've posted to where we have designated that we do not want them showing on our VAT return. I haven't got any of those transactions, so no report is being produced, and I'll show you that option in just a moment. The third report that it produces is a list of all our VATable transactions, and these are all codes that are included in our VAT return. So it shows us on a VAT code by VAT code basis all the transactions, sales and purchase, net and VAT values. So we could spool this, we can print it, we can export it to PDF, we can save it for our records. So I just close that down and close that down. However, all we did was print, so we haven't actually submitted, we haven't actually completed this VAT return. We've got those reports and we can balance those figures to the nominal ledger. We can make any adjustments that we want to. And once we're happy with those figures, what we need to do is produce the VAT return. Now, by doing this, we now come up with a confirmation box. We have to tick the I understand that this VAT return can only be produced once box. You do have an option to delete VAT transactions with a date earlier than whatever date you enter. I'm inclined not to be too enthusiastic to delete VAT transactions. Okay, I've not come across an issue where people have too many VAT transactions that the system can't cope with them. But maybe as part of the year-end process, you might perhaps want to delete transactions that are older than 5 or 6 years old. It's also asking us to confirm the next VAT return date. And our return date is going to be the 30th of June 2015. So that will be our next 30th of June 2015. Lovely. So now we can produce our VAT return. Again, we get the message that this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, that we won't be able to reopen this VAT period. But yes, I want to continue. Now, I'm going to submit my VAT return online. So it's asking me for my online VAT credentials. It's asking me for my first name, last name, telephone number and email address, my user ID, my password, and confirmation of the password. What it's going to do now is going to connect to the government gateway. So just select continue. It's asking me just to check my details. So I'm going to submit. I've got some errors because I've just made up those connection details. I'm going to try and continue anyway, and it's still telling me the submission has not been successful. Click here and I can view the reasons why. Well, we know the reasons why. I didn't put in a legitimate user account. Sage is now going to complete the VAT return. Okay, so it's producing the same reports that we saw earlier, but this time it hasn't got that this is not the true document. It's our true VAT return for the period January through to March 2015. It's telling me the same message about the the VAT codes that I'm not printing out or not displaying on my VAT return. And it's also going to produce the same report of all my VAT transactions for codes that have been included in the VAT return. So again, we can spool these or we can print them out. It's given me that message that the online submission could not be completed, so I will need to resubmit the VAT return. So first of all, I'm just going to close these reports down. Okay, back to our VAT analysis. If you see, it's moved the VAT return end date onto the 30th of June 2015, even though that submission was unsuccessful. The third tab we have is completed period totals, and here we have this submission for the period end date 31st of March 2015. It's submitted online, but the submission status is failure. So I can come back to this screen and I can select resubmit at any point in time, re-enter my credentials and submit that at a better time to get that through to HMRC. Okay, so that's actually producing the VAT return. Now, the actual journal to take the VAT figures out of your input VAT, out of your output VAT and into your liability account is a manual journal. Okay. So when you come to balancing your input and output VAT, the only reason really that should be out of balance is if you haven't done that journal at the end of the last quarter. If that's the case, what I recommend you do is if you go to the account inquiry, you can go to the budgets tab, and this will show you the balance on a month-by-month basis. So if you just look at the balance for the 3 months that make up the quarter that you're trying to submit, they should balance to your input and your output figures that are showing on your VAT return. If I go back to Accounting System Manager, but this time go into Settings and VAT Rates, it is through here that you designate which VAT codes you want to show on the VAT return. I've got everything selected, hence I was getting that message that no report could be produced. I don't have any VAT codes that I'm not showing on the VAT return, but if you do, then you'd get a report of any transactions where they've been posted to this particular VAT code that is not ticked to show on your VAT return. Okay, so that's reconciling our VAT. So again, not done monthly, usually done quarterly, but I know some people do it monthly. But it's again a good function to getting used to using through Sage 200. Okay, so we've done all our balancing and we've done all our processing. We're actually ready to run the month end itself. Now, within Accounting System Manager, there's an option in there, Accounting Periods. And the first option there is Maintain Accounting Periods. And if I open up that, you can see this screen. Now, what this is telling me is we have all these different statuses for our periods for each of our modules. Period 1 is currently closed for all of our modules. Now what that means is that if I were to put on a sales invoice or a purchase invoice dated January 2015, if it's a purchase invoice, then the purchase ledger account will be updated with that transaction, but the nominal will not be adjusted until period 2 because that's the next period that's open after the date of that particular transaction. You can have all periods open, or you can just have one period open at a time, or you can choose, perhaps you want 2 or 3 periods to be open at any one point in time. And that's set up within our settings, system settings, and the number of open accounting periods that are permitted. So people coming from Sage 50 do quite like the comfort factor of having all 12 periods open. It's just personal preference. There is no right or wrong. If I go back to my Maintain Accounting Periods, you see here we've got all of these periods that are open as far as November 2015, whereby I've got the sales ledger that's open. However, I haven't opened the purchases, cash book, stock, or nominal. And what that means is if I enter any sales transaction dated November 2015, then the nominal ledger will be updated with that transaction at that point in time. However, if I put a purchase invoice on dated November 2015, the purchase ledger will be updated, but that transaction will sit in deferred postings in the nominal ledger, and it will be transferred to our current postings at the point of time that we open up period 11 for the purchase ledger. So future periods mean you can carry on posting. It's not going to stop you transacting, but the nominal ledger is not going to be updated. Everything will go into deferred postings until you choose to open that particular period. Now, if I highlight any period, if you notice I get the change period status box available to me on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. And that's because I have maintained accounting period user permissions as an option, and you have to determine which users have access to that particular functionality. If I just edit myself here, what you can do is add, amend, and delete periods. You can open future periods, close periods, and reopen closed periods for each of the modules. So you just determine who can do what within Maintain Accounting Periods on a user-by-user basis. Now, in the handouts that we provided for you, our month-end procedures, we've put some sort of like hints and tips of things that you need to be considering before you actually close down the month-end itself. So, for example, in stock control, we always try to say ensure that all goods received have been booked in, all adjustments to any negative stock levels have been processed, and that you run the stock valuation report at the calendar month end. For purchase order processing, we recommend that you ensure all goods received have been booked in, you process as many invoices as possible, you run the goods received not invoiced accrual, and that you run the standard cost variance if required. So if you're using standard cost, you need to run the standard cost variance to put your nominal ledger in balance with your stock control. Sales order processing, we recommend that you process all invoices for the month and ensure that they're dated within the month and that you post all invoices. For the cash book, ensure that all transactions have been entered, you've processed your direct debits and you've done your bank reconciliation as far as possible. The sales ledger, ensure that basically that's up to date, allocate any cash received on account. Purchase ledger, allocate any cash that paid to accounts. And for the nominal ledger, we recommend report postings to the nominal ledger just to check for accounts that need to be created. Also update the postings for the nominal ledger. Now, we would also recommend taking a local backup of Sage 200 prior to running the month ends. It's a bit of a nuisance through SQL. You do need to get everybody out of the system. So you could just make your month-end process first thing in the morning once you've done the automated backup has been processed overnight. So just stop users going in for that first hour of your month-end process, and then you know you have your backup to refer back to if required. Okie doke. Now running the month-end is such a simple process. We just go to maintain accounting periods, and now all we need to do is highlight the period and the module that we're wanting to close. So let's look on a module by module basis. The only rule that applies to this process is that the nominal ledger has to be the last module that's closed for any period. So if I were to try to close this, it would tell me that I can't set the nominal adjustment period to close until all the source modules are first set to closed. Apart from that, we can close the modules in any sequence that we choose. So for stock control, part of the month-end process we would say would be to run your stock valuation report, check that stock values to the nominal, maybe run a profitability report and any other reports that you feel are valid for your stock management. But once you've got your figures for stock control, you just highlight the period you wanted to close, change period status, and say OK. Simple. Period end procedure is complete. Going to have a little think while it just finishes the process. So you can see now, excuse me, you can see now that period 2 for stock control has been closed, even though sales, purchase, cash book and nominal are still open. For the cash book, we recommend that you revalue any foreign bank accounts prior to closing down your month end. You reconcile the cash book to the nominal ledger, and you finalize any postings to the nominal from the cash book. So maybe just doing your bank reconciliation as close as possible to the month end as you can to ensure that the cash book is fully updated. We can then come into our maintain accounting periods, highlight that period for the cash book, change period status, and OK. And OK to our completion message. Again, just a moment while it completes that process. So now you can see that we've closed both stock control and the cash book. For the sales ledger, again, recommend that you revalue your foreign currency accounts. That's found in your sales ledger period end routines foreign account revaluation. We also recommend that you process your finance charges. That's if you charge finance charges. And some reports that you may need to be running. So certainly your debtors report, so you'd run your debtors report and you ensure that that balances through to the nominal ledger. Maybe run your sales ledger statements and send those out to your customers. If it's relevant, then run your EC sales list if required. Plus there's some other optional reports that you might be interested in, such as the trading report, your transaction listing or the day book. But once you've balanced and you have all your sales figures, you just highlight the relevant period within Maintain Accounting Periods and change period status. If you notice, it's slightly different for our sales ledger. It's prompting us for an order summary report sequence. The sales ledger will produce a list of accounts and is asking us what sequence we want that report to be in. By default, it's the reference to the account number sequence, but we could choose to run it in short name sequence, account manager. What we're seeing here actually are our analysis codes. So that would be unique to yourselves. Any sales ledger analysis codes that you have set up, you could run the report in that sequence. So I'm going to say OK to that. Now Sage will run through all of our sales ledger accounts, and this time it will produce the sales ledger period end report. It's telling us our period end procedure is complete, so we can say OK to that. And if we have a little look at the report, it just shows a list of our accounts with the account name and the account number, the currency, the number of transactions on that account, the credit limit and the balance, but also highlighting any accounts where the stop flag has been set. The purchase ledger, again, we would recommend you revalue your foreign currency accounts. Run your creditors report and balance your creditors report to the nominal ledger, and then maybe run some other reports such as your trading report, transaction listing, process all your payments, just the usual month-end processing within the module. Once you're happy with your purchase figures, we can actually just highlight our purchase column for that particular period, change period status. Again, it will produce a report of our supplier accounts in a sequence that's designated by ourselves. By default, the reference, but it could be the short name or any of the analysis codes that we've set up for our supplier accounts. I just say OK to that. Again, it's going to read through all my supplier accounts and produce our purchase ledger period end report before letting us know that the period end procedure has been complete. And again, if we have a little look at that period end report, we can see that it lists all our suppliers with the account number, name, currency, number of transactions, the credit limit, the balance, and again, if any accounts are on hold, we would see that flag. The final module is our nominal ledger. Okay. So before you actually close down your nominal month end, again, what we recommend that you do is run off all your financial reports. So your trial balance, your profit and loss, and your balance sheet. You can run them retrospectively, but it's at this point in time that you're going to get your final figures. Because we're closing our period end down, Sage 200 is a closed accounting system. It means that once I've closed nominal ledger now for month 2, nobody can post any further transactions in that period. So my financial reports are going to be static. Nobody can change them. I know I have my final management accounts. If I just change the period status in the nominal ledger, if you notice now there's no prompt for any reporting. We just say OK to that and OK to the period end is complete. And now we've closed the nominal ledger. Okay. So as I say, the actual closing of the month end is very, very straightforward. So long as you have the permissions defined in the Maintain Accounting Period User Permissions, you can come into this screen and you can highlight any of your modules and you can change the status. Now, when I highlighted any of the open periods and I select Change Period Status, Sage knew that I wanted that period to be closed. It's the only thing that I could do at that particular status. However, if I want to open period 11 for the purchase ledger, I highlight that future period. So now when I select Change Period Status, it's asking me if I want to open period 11 transactions from the purchase ledger. And if I say yes to that, what it's going to do is move any deferred postings that have come from the purchase ledger dated November 2015, and it's going to move them to the current postings file. So here we can see we have 2 postings. Okay. The purchase ledger is now open for period 11, which means that if I enter any transactions in the purchase ledger dated November 2015, they will automatically be updated to the nominal ledger. They won't be sitting in deferred postings. So because I've opened that future period and I have deferred postings that have been moved to current, within the nominal ledger, current waiting postings list, if I refresh, there are my postings that have just been transferred from deferred postings to current, and I need to update those postings to the nominal ledger. Even if you have the setting set that you automatically want postings to go directly to the nominal ledger, when postings are moved from deferred to current, you do need to manually update those waiting postings. We just say OK on that screen. It will update those postings to the nominal ledger. And if I refresh my screen, you'll see that we now have no more waiting postings. Okay, so that covers our month-end procedures. As I say, quite a lot to cover there in 3/4 of an hour, but hopefully it's given you an idea of the process to follow. You have the handouts, so please download those, have a look through them. Any questions that you have, please let me know, and I will be getting back to you individually straight after this webinar. The next webinar that we're running will actually be on the 16th of December because it's just before Christmas, and we're going to be looking at year-end processing. So the follow-up really from the month-end process, we're going to be looking at closing down our financial year within Sage 200. So hopefully you can all join us for that. You will get the invitation sent out in plenty of time, so try to keep that date free. That's Friday the 16th of December, and we'll be doing our year-end processing. So thank you for your time. Have a lovely day, and hopefully we'll catch up again soon.